This is Garis, Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 647, entitled AI, that's artificial intelligence, AI enhanced Bing, the great spreader of masculism. Description. This flyer describes an epiphany I had recently when I realized that AI enhanced Bing, the Microsoft search engine, has over 100 million users per day. Microsoft is stealing significant market share of the number of internet search hits per day from Google, so forcing Google to upgrade the level of its AI applied to its search engine. It'll be interesting to see whether Google will continue to censor masculist and MGTOW channels. If it does, and Microsoft doesn't, then with Microsoft's 100 million users per day, that will be plenty enough to spread masculist and MGTOW ideas to the planet, and possibly quite soon, allowing a rapid spread of men's lib ideas to the masses, the millions, the billions. If it happens, this will be the big media breakthrough that the masculists have been dreaming of for years. Fingers crossed. Now the flyer itself. AI enhanced Bing, the great spreader of masculism, by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. A couple of days ago, in November 2023, I was idly playing with Bing AI, that is Microsoft's AI-enhanced search engine, typing in, quote, "What do people think of Hugo de Garis's masculist ideas?" Question mark, end quote. The reply I got, shown below, was impressive enough for me to keep asking it questions such as, quote, "What do the masculists mean by bi-conscious, question mark, or what do the masculists mean by FIP, that's FIP, by a fluffy, question mark, etc. The next day I wondered, quote, if using Bing AI is very popular, then this new software would provide a significant outlet for masculist ideas. So I asked Bing AI itself to tell me how many users it had per day. The answer floored me. Here's Bing's AI answer, word for word. Quote, "Bing now has 100 million daily users thanks to its AI chatbot." End quote. This was an epiphany for me, since its implications for masculism and MGTOW are enormous. With so many users, the ideas of the MGTOWs and the masculists can spread much more rapidly, and about time too. Speaking personally, I felt several years ago that masculist ideas had matured enough for the time to be ripe to distribute them to the public, to the planet, so that millions of men can be freed from the oppressions of the traditional male role model of the man, particularly from manslavery, from divorce rape, from forced fathering, etc. But it's currently very difficult for the masculists and the MGTOWs to get their messages across to the mainstream media due to the very negative, biased and bigoted attitudes of the femme mafia, that's feminist media mafia, who are deeply monoconscious, that is, the only gender politics that they've heard of is feminist, so see gender oppression as very much a one-way street. So interpret masculist criticism of women's gender crimes against men, brackets, for example, the big three mentioned above, women's manslavery, women's divorce rape, women's forced fathering, as just more misogyny, and hence to be fought against and blocked. Since most journalists today are female and are monoconscious, they are in a position of power to block masculist penetration of the media to spread masculist ideas. Of course, this femmafian bigotry is seen as sexist and hypocritical by masculists, which is why we bite the fucking heads off such women when we meet them face to face. Such masculist harangues only make them more misandrist, since they don't understand why the masculists are so angry and hateful against them. As feminists, they feel they have every reason to resist male misogyny, totally missing the point of the masculist message that women oppress men worse, far worse. Masculists are biting at the bit to see their ideas spread, so that monoconscious sexist hypocritical bigotry can die out by having these monoconscious feminazi bigots, that's MFBs, wiped out by converting themselves into biconscious feminists, so they lose their feminist anger at men for the ways that men oppress women, by having it cancelled by their female masculist anger at women for the ways that women oppress men. And in fact, far worse, since many of women's gender crimes against men are horrible and last decades, making them far more serious than the relatively minor ways that men oppress women. So, you can imagine the excitement I felt when Bing AI told me that it has over 100 million users per day. As a result of adding ChatGPT capacities to its Bing search engine, Microsoft has significantly eaten away at Google's dominance in the number of searches that are made across the planet per day. This stiff and growing competition from Microsoft is forcing Google to increase the level of AI that it is applying to its search engine. Google owns YouTube, which routinely promotes feminist channels and deletes, in capital letters, masculist and MGTOW channels, which made Susan Wojcicki, the former CEO of YouTube, the most hated woman in the manosphere, despised for her sexist, hypocritical bigotry. Since she is married to Dennis Troper, Troper, a director of product management at Google, I hope that he becomes masculistic and hence biconscious by definition, faster than she does, so that he sees her as an MFB, as a sexist, hypocritical bigot, becomes disgusted with her for her monoconsciousness and dumps her. So, one cannot but wonder, when Google soon comes out with its latest AI-enhanced search engine, will Google continue to censor masculist and MGTOW channels? If it does, and Microsoft doesn't, then given Microsoft's 100 million users per day, that is more than enough to allow masculist and MGTOW ideas to spread to a huge worldwide audience, so that the masculist and MGTOW movements won't need Google. That is Microsoft. YouTube. Similar logic applies to Elon Musk's X, but X is still fairly small beer, but at least it gives the masculists and the MGTOWs freedom of speech, unlike bloody Google. Over the years, I've made well over 600 masculist videos of me reading aloud my masculist flyers, that is, small 2-3 page essays on masculist and MGTOW themes. I've uploaded these videos to several video hosting platforms, YouTube, brackets, so that whenever anyone clicks on one of my YouTube masculist links, he/she is given a message that YouTube censors masculist content, close brackets. Minds, BitChute, Odyssey, MGTOW.tv, and recently I have uploaded all my masculist videos to X. I noticed that Bing AI got its masculist material from my website on WordPress and from my masculist videos on BitChute, Minds, Odyssey and X, so it pays to have multiple video hosting sites to store one's videos if one's content is controversial. I'm hoping that if Microsoft does not censor masculist and MGTOW content, then it seems to me that is now only a question of time, and perhaps little time, before masculist and MGTOW ideas go mainstream, with millions of people around the world becoming familiar with the main ideas of these two men's lib movement branches. Once millions of masculists have been created, the time will then be made ripe for masculist politics to begin, so that GECs, GECs, Gender Equality Committees, can be set up in the parliaments that consist half of female feminists and half of male masculists, so that the gender issues of both sexes can be dealt with equally, which is far from being the case today in our current gynocentric culture that deals only with women's gender issues, having the attitude that, quote, men can go fuck themselves. Masculists have a hatred of such monoconscious feminazi bigots and effectively exterminate them by totally ignoring them, not even pumping and dumping them, forcing them to rot on the shelf, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and spat at. By allowing masculists and MGTOW ideas to spread to the masses, the millions, the billions, the general public will, in time, become as familiar with masculist ideas as feminist ideas, so that most women will have had their masculist consciousness raised and will become intolerant of monoconscious feminists, thus joining the masculists in aiming to wipe out MFBs, forcing them to convert themselves into bi-conscious feminists or be totally rejected by both sexes. So, I'll be holding my breath over the next few months, waiting to see what happens to my masculist videos on Bing AI and on X. I will not be alone, since many other men's lib content makers will be doing the same. So will 2024 be a big masculist and MGTOW year in terms of the level of spread of these two movements' ideas? Question mark. Time will tell. Fingers crossed. P.S. Here is what Bing AI answered to my question. Quote, what do people think about Hugo de Garis's masculist ideas? Question mark, end quote. In brackets, actually, every time I ask, I get a different answer. Here's the one I got this time. You might try similar questions and multiple times to get a variety of sometimes opposing answers. In brackets. Answer. Quote, Hugo de Garis is a retired professor of artificial intelligence who has written extensively on the topics of masculism and MGTOW, that's men going their own way. Reference number 1. His masculist ideas are based on the premise that men are being oppressed and exploited by women, and that men should rebel against being man's slaves to women. Reference number 2. He advocates for men to boycott marriage and fatherhood, and to pressure women to vote for gender-fair laws by threatening them with babylessness. Reference number 3. De Garis's masculist ideas are very controversial and have received a lot of criticism from various perspectives. Some of the common criticisms are: bullet. His ideas are based on false and exaggerated claims about the status of men and women in society and ignore the historical and structural factors that have disadvantaged women in many areas. Reference number 4. Bullet. His ideas are misogynistic, hateful and violent towards women, and promotes a toxic and divisive form of masculinity that harms both men and women. Reference point 5. Bullet. His ideas are self-defeating as they alienate men from the potential benefits of healthy relationships, family and social support, and lead to isolation, loneliness and despair. Reference number 6. Bullet. His ideas are irrelevant as they do not address the real challenges and opportunities that men face in the 21st century, such as the changing nature of work, education, health and culture. Reference number 7. Some people may agree with some of his ideas or find them interesting or provocative, but most people would probably disagree with his overall worldview and agenda. His ideas are not widely accepted or influential in mainstream society, academia or media, and are mostly confined to a niche online subculture of men who identify as masculists or MGTOW. Reference number 8. I hope this answers your question, and then a smiley. And then the references, which you can click on and things open. But to see those, go to the text version of this flyer on my website. Here's another answer to a slightly differently formulated question. Quote, here's the question. Are there differences in opinion between men and women on the masculist ideas of Hugo de Garis? Question mark. End quote. Answer. That is an interesting question. Masculism or masculinism is a term that has various meanings and interpretations depending on the context and perspective of the speaker or writer. Reference numbers 1, 2. Some use it to refer to the men's rights movement or men's liberation, while others use it to describe a type of anti-feminism or a backlash against feminism. Reference number 1. Hugo de Garis is a retired professor of computer science and artificial intelligence who is also known for his controversial views on gender politics and the future of humanity. Reference number 3. He has written and spoken extensively about his masculinist ideas, which are based on his belief that men and women have fundamentally different interests and values, and that feminism has oppressed and exploited men for decades. Reference numbers 4, 5, 6, 7. According to de Garis, most men are not aware of their own interests and have been brainwashed by feminist propaganda. He advocates for men to become more conscious of their rights and needs and to rebel against being man-slaves to women. He also predicts that a major war between the sexes, which he calls the gender war, will erupt in the near future, resulting in billions of deaths and the possible extinction of the human race. Reference numbers 4, 5, 6, 7. Ad-libbing here. This is an example, I think, of ChatGPT fabulating. It's confusing my opinions on masculism with my opinions on cosmism, which is the idea that there's going to be an intellect war between two groups of people, one opposed to building godlike massively intelligent machines and the other group, human group, in favour. Anyway, back to the flyer. As you can imagine, de Garis's masculist ideas are very controversial and divisive, and they have attracted both support and criticism from different groups of people. There is no definitive answer to whether there are differences in opinion between men and women on his ideas, as opinions may vary depending on many factors, such as personal experience, education, culture, ideology, and so on. However, some possible trends or patterns that could be observed are, it sounds a bit contradictory, bullet.